It's 10:30 a.m. Friday, March 19th, 2021. I call to order the Coney County Council Special Meeting. Discussion item. I believe we've got Danny Duncan here from the Westminster City Council. Could you come to the podium and
I was asked on behalf of the City Council in Westminster to come and read you a letter from the council. And I'll do so, and gentlemen, I'll just let you know it's very brief. It's not going to be long at all. Dear Mr. Chairman Elliott, we appreciate your service and that of the County Council, Mr. Davis, Mr. Kane, Mr. Hart, and Mr. Durham. As elected officials, we are often called upon to make decisions that affect our community in both large and small ways. Please accept this letter as a statement of full support and our city's dedication to serve as a stakeholder in the construction of a magistrate's court facility at 1606 East Main Street, downtown Westminster. We understand and we very much appreciate that you and many of the county staff have worked persistently over a period of years to do the necessary due diligence to evaluate alternative sites within the city of Westminster, and that you have thoughtfully selected 1606 East Main Street as what is the most economical and universally accessible for the citizens. Further, we know you considered all aspects of the cost of this project and believe your planned investment in a public facility to serve all Laconians is a wise investment of what is known as the People's Court. This is critical importance, not to the elected officials, but to the people, to the citizens we serve. It is one of the last places a citizen can avail him or herself of the right to be self-represented, represented, or otherwise be heard on matters within the court's jurisdiction. Given the due diligence afforded by all of you and the reverence to this building, we feel it is critical to move this project forward. We especially appreciate and recognize Councilman Julian Davis' leadership in support of the city and the citizens of Westminster. As his district includes all city and all of our citizens, his efforts to create this new magistrate's office will have a long-lasting impact. Access to justice is a critical endeavor, especially where economic resource among and citizens are disparate. As the saying goes, a rising tide floats all boats. We look forward to celebrating his footsteps on this cornerstone of justice. We believe this investment in Westminster by each of you is a vital investment for all Laconians. We believe this location is the best location. Since the property has been non-taxable for many years, new construction for a public facility on this property will increase the value of surrounding properties that do generate taxable income. Rehabilitation of property can only serve for the future good of Oconee and other counties, particularly for the cause of justice. We understand and appreciate the challenge of balancing the investment of tax dollars in a new magistrate facility. We, members of Westminster City Council, join the citizens in thanking you for your consideration. We respectfully ask that you move this project forward as you have previously planned, with the intended goal of providing liberty and justice for all regardless of means. We join in you in belief that our citizens deserve that from both county and city council level. Sincerely, the city of Westminster. I also have, gentlemen, a copy of this letter for each of you, and also a copy of the resolution that we passed in Westminster, and I'll pass those out, and without anything else, that's all I have, and I appreciate you.
Mr. Duncan, I have a couple of questions. So, did all council members approve this?
100%.
And is the whole city area population represented by the councilmen that are on council? In other words, I assume you've got different councilmen that represent different parts of the city?
No.
No? Okay.
It's not like county council where we have districts. We serve the entire city. Of all council people are involved in all aspects. Now, to maybe further, we used to have had it broken down into, we had a police chairman of the police department, fire department. Prior to me getting there, they've done away with that. So everybody's involved in all aspects of the city and on council.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Y'all have a budget
That
in
is
the
correct.
city, right?
That is correct.
What if you had something that you'd proposed to buy, and then when you go to get it, the price is doubled on it, and you've got it in your budget at one place, what would the city do?
Well, I don't know, and I'll tell you why. Because when that comes up, now, I think I know where it's going, but when that particular item comes up, then council will vote on it as a whole. It won't be one individual make that decision. I mean, we would have to look at that. I agree with what you're saying, that it would require some due diligence and some studies to do, but I understand exactly what you're saying. But as far as me making or anybody else making that decision, it'd have to go before the whole council.
I understand that, I wouldn't try and make you make
No.
one decision, but I'm just saying, what would your city think if the price doubled on something?
Well, again, I don't know, and I know what would probably be the logical answer, or maybe the logical answer, I don't know. But until we met with, as I said, with council and the rest of the people, and got out in the community and got a feel for what was going on, I couldn't make that decision. I mean, they may say go with it anyway. They may want it that bad. I don't know. We would just have to do the due diligence and get with the people and get an idea of what the people as a majority wanted.
Another question. If y'all wanted it bad enough, would y'all want to put some skin in the game?
Again, I'd have to take it back to council. I'd like to, I think we would entertain whatever. We would entertain. I mean, it's the county council has bought the property and the building, okay? It's obviously going to benefit Westminster, and we understand that. We also believe it'll benefit a lot of people in Oconee County. But we would, again, have to, I'm sure I'm not going to make the decision on the city council's behalf. If a proposal were made, you guys agree upon that, we'll look. I would say we have no other choice. We have no other choice but to entertain. If that's what you guys as a whole propose to us, I mean, we'll do whatever we're supposed to or need to do.
You said the whole council voted for, or the city council voted. Did the mayor vote for it too?
The mayor, I looked on here today, and his signature is on here.
Okay. I
understand.
was curious, because Mr. Davis when he brought this motion up to put it up for sale, had talked about the mayor and some of his comments about putting it back on the tax roll.
Well, if you're asking me for an answer to that, and I guess I'll be extremely brief, the council was as surprised as you are. That happened because,
Mr. Hart, you can ask me that question if you want to. Since
Which
Mr.
question?
you're asking Mr. Duncan to answer what I said.
No, but you were saying that that's what Mr. Ramey called and told you. I was just asking him how he voted.
Right.
That was my whole point, was how he got a change of heart and sort of withered under the sunlight.
I think Mr. Ramey had the same conversation with you as well, correct?
Somewhat, I initiated the conversation. I called him to ask him what his thoughts were and if they had any other property that building could go on.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Duncan.
anything else from anybody? I appreciate your time, gentlemen.
No, sir.
I appreciate your time, I really do, and all that you do, I understand that. We do it on a lower level, but I do understand and appreciate what you do every day. Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Duncan, if you don't mind, would you please state your name for the record, please, sir?
Danny Duncan.
Thank you.
I
We know who you are, but it's just
know
official.
that, I know that.
Thank
Thank you.
you. You want me to hand those out for you?
Mr. Chairman, if I can speak real quick. So I'm appreciate y'all being here today to have this. I thought it was necessary. We've had several meetings about the magistrate. We've had several studies about the magistrate. And I know Mr. Durham was not on council at a lot of these, and when it originally began back in 2013, nor was I. When I came in, my first question is why hasn't this gotten built? And it was constantly on the funding, the strategic plan of council for years and years and years, even before I came on. The difference was that we found a way to fund it, and council agreed to fund it and has agreed. So from 2013 to now, the cost of everything has gone up. And I just went back and pulled some documents that I had from the original study that identified several parcels that were in there. The East Weston Street, the East Main Street, which was formerly the Dads and Lads building, and the Town Hall of the City of Westminster. And looking at either building or going into the old fire station. So this was done, again, had nothing to do with me. This was council's strategic plan on how do we build this and where do we build it. And let's make sure we do the research and find the best opportunity for it. And they ended out over there where the old post office was, or beside the library. When I came on council, the first thing that I looked at is if Oconee County is going to make an investment in a city, why wouldn't it make an investment in the city that made the most impact? So that's where I began trying to think through and look through the feasibility studies that were done before me, the feasibility studies that were done before actually city did one in 2015. And in actually my conversations with city council and the mayor, we talked about they're wanting to do a combined city hall, magistrate, police station, a new one. And so we, of course, went down this conversation and we sat down and talked about it. We actually had paid for the feasibility study, because at that time the city did not volunteer to help pay for that feasibility study. So the county paid for the feasibility study, did the research with that. At that time, the administrator was Chris Carter and Brian Ramey was the mayor at that time. They sat down and went through and came up with what City Hall needs, and we came up with what the court needs. Put those two together and then began talking about places to actually build that together. We identified the Jansen property that was owned by Mr. Smith at that time. We identified the existing location where City Hall is, and I was told by, at that time, the city administrator, that they would tear down the original City Hall. And I raised a red flag and I said, I don't think that's a good decision, because that is a historical building. It is one, in my opinion, one of the nicest looking buildings in the city of Westminster, and could serve another purpose besides putting that there. We then talked about putting it behind the existing magistrate building. There was some noted, based on some of the studies that were done before I got on, there were some noted infrastructure issues down through there. There was some moving of some pipes and things like that. I understand with even the new location, there's some movement of that stuff as well. But identifying that as a bad location, because it not only required movement of several infrastructures, it also required the removal of several buildings. So you're still in that demolition time frame. So when we talked about the cost of the city hall was somewhere in the mix of about $1 million, I think is what they estimated that would be. I asked Mayor Ramey and Chris Carter, where would that money come from the city if they chose to build this? Because we have got to build, enough's enough. We've got to build this, period. It's embarrassing for people to stand down as a jury with an umbrella in the rain and talk about somebody's livelihood one way or the other, which way they're going to vote on this. And so that's when I that was about a if I'm not mistaken, about a 6-month process that we went through and kind of waited. So when I hear somebody say, well, what's taking so long? This was one of the things that's taken so long. It was due diligence, looking at all avenues that we could go. When I realized that a city hall and combined court was not going to be a reality, I chose, and in speaking with council, we went back out on our own to where we were just gonna build it. We looked at the Bills building, we looked at the old Barrett Furniture place. We did a lot of, we looked at the land beside the Sanderford Funeral Home. Me and Amanda spent about 8 hours going through different properties in Westminster, identifying those. And at that time, we did drive through behind the city hall to look and think through, how is this going to fit here? What is the grade going to be? I'm not a builder, but I have an idea that when I look at a gigantic hole, it's going to be expensive, which is why when we went over there beside the library, I was like, why would we put this investment here? This does nothing to change the city of Westminster. So maybe it's my fault that I went and looked at what is a non-taxable piece of property that exists within the city of Westminster that I feel like nobody's probably going to buy, and we have the ability to buy it at a good rate, and turn it around into something that can change Westminster. That's where the Gospel Holiness Church came in. We went and looked at it. It was actually raining that day. I had my flashlight. Powell Real Estate was the listing agent, had been the only listing agent that I knew of on that for years and years and years. The sign had been out there for so long that it was faded. So we went in there, looked at it together with the flashlight, walked through everything. It was raining in specific portions of the building. We talked about it. That was probably a month before it came on auction. Council had been made aware of this. We actually brought it into executive session, and I'm not revealing executive session because this is out here now. We talked about it. We talked about the ability, there's a possibility that we can keep the structure. However, we need to look at the ability to keep the structure versus building a new one. That was part of the study when council elected to move forward with the purchase of that property, and we did purchase that property. It was $121,000 on auction. There was another person that was in there. There was some thought processes where people had looked at it for a multitude of reasons. I don't know about a restaurant because for what I know about that building, it needed a lot of work. But for an office style system like the court, it worked out perfectly. The magistrate had been there. We had the opening, I think we called it, I forget what we called it.
Demo and Donuts.
Demo and Donuts, that we were there. Some people came out and talked about it because at that time we had understood that the cost to build versus the cost to renovate was literally pennies on the dollar with each other. So, and where I come from, I like saving buildings. I do. I live in an older home. I like the character of that. But at the same time, we have to be smart and physically responsible down the way because I'm not going to be here. And I mean, I might not be here after 4 years, and that's fine. But I'm not going to be here 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the road when this building is. So from a standpoint on that, I felt the best thing to do is to demo the building, which came in at $44,000 with some abatement, which is in my opinion, based on the market that we're in right now, well below what we estimated to be at $65,000. It's actually at $44,000 some odd dollars. So not to continue to ramble on, but we have been through several feasibility studies with the city. I have spoken to city leaders, and I will apologize because when I get called by elected official, if I get called by an elected official and it's on a county matter or it's on a city matter, I assume the person is calling me in their elected capacity. I will ask that question from now on, that it was a personal opinion. And so I will from now on, if an elected official calls me, I will ask if this is an elected capacity or is this a personal capacity. So I'm just clear when I make a statement because my statement to sell was based on what I felt at that time was being discussed as the mayor to me, the best thing to do was to sell the building and build somewhere else. I do not feel that way, and I made that statement that day, that I feel like council has done its due diligence, staff has done its due diligence, the magistrate court has done its due diligence, and deserves this building. And I think from a fiscally responsible thing, we have made a good decision. And until the other night, what I was made aware of that was kind of going on, I hadn't seen any pushback from anywhere, and nothing but honestly, people are glad to see a building that is fallen in, that already had a hole in it when we purchased it, going towards something else.
Mr. Chairman. I don't have the information in front of me, but I had quotes from Mrs. Brock a month after we bought the building. This is a perfect square footage. This building will work out perfectly. All the time I was led along thinking that this building was going to be something that could be done. That's the reason I voted for it. But now that I found out this thing is going to hell in the devil's handbag, I got reservations, because this is taxpayers' money that we're doing, and we're doubling up what we had thought that it was going to cost to start with.
Mr.
What
Chairman.
was that cost, Mr. Hart? What, because I don't have, in all my figures, I don't see a double cost.
Well, we've had 500,000 and we got up to 900,000, and when you start building, there's gonna be more added to it, so somewhere it's gonna go up to 1 million, so I figure it's gonna double.
Mr. Chairman. So this has been a mess. It's been a mess for a few years. Obviously, as mentioned long before I came here, before some of us came. But, it's like a big game going on with taxpayer money. And if it was your own money, you wouldn't be playing these games. And I'll tell you the red flags that I see. Mr. Hart touched on some of them. We started out $500,000. Now we're pushing $900,000. Before it's all said and done, it'll probably be $1 million. We're paying $160,000 essentially for a vacant lot in Westminster. Is that the going price of land in Westminster these days? And this brings me to my next point. Again, I don't have all the detail because I wasn't part of all the discussion. But, I've been told there's land available owned by the city of Westminster that possibly this could be built on. And that would be a much better option. It's already taxpayer owned versus paying $160,000 for a vacant lot. And the next thing is the deception. I wasn't on council, but it was definitely sold to the public as this is a great building. We're going to renovate it at the time. It's going to be great. But it's clear now that when it was bought, that the intention all along was to tear it down. If we was going to renovate it from the start, we would have fixed the leaking roof right away to prevent any further damage. I have an open mind. I'm not closed off on this. I think this is good. I think the frank discussion is good. But we need to work through it.
There was no deception when we bought the building. That's a pretty tough word to use over there, but, when Trail came back on the design build, was that, the bid process was design build, if I'm not mistaken?
Right.
When they came back with a process, they came back with pretty much everything. I think we had 3 or 4 groups that bid on that. They came back with 2, dollar figures to renovate or to build, raise and rebuild. From that standpoint of it, it came back to council to talk about what we should do with this. When the dollar figure is together, the long-term cost of a renovated building is elevating. So that was the reason why we moved forward with the demolition of that. So it was $121,000. That building had been for sale, from what I'm told, for $275,000. And yes, from what I can see, the going rate for specific portions with infrastructure in place and ready to go, that was a feasible purchase. Not to mention that we have an additional usable building on there. So from the term deception, there was absolutely no deception in this decision-making.
I'll tell you why it was deceptive.
Well, let me
If
speak.
Julian Davis buys a building, if you buy a home, you say, I'm gonna renovate this home. The first thing you're gonna do is try to stop the leaking in and stop the damage. That was never done. That was never done. So the intent all along was to tear it down. If you use your money to buy a building to save, the first thing you're gonna do is stop the damage, increase damage.
The
But it's
entire
not your
roof
money,
had to come
this is
off
the
of it.
taxpayers' money.
Mr. Durham, the entire roof had to come off of it regardless of what we were doing.
Right, but you patch what you can. You just let water drain in it for what, how long now, Glenn? 2 years?
That was because the council had already noted that we were going to raise the building.
All right, so how long did it take you to decide to tear the building down from the time you purchased
That
it?
was when Trail brought that forth on,
I've just texted our procurement director to bring me some documents, so I would have them available in just a few minutes.
I have
I'm
this
sorry.
thing. I don't know if that's helpful. That's that timeline you passed on.
Timeline, yes, that is on the current building.
Is that on something you gave us?
Not today, no, sir. Hang on one second.
I
let
just
me-
brought that because this was on the agenda today.
So it was sold to the public as we can rehab this building. It was, I was the public
And
at the time.
Mr. Durham, we did explore
But the
the
actions
option
right
of doing
afterwards
that.
show that was not the intent. And I'll be honest with you, so here I am, having to make a decision off of a mess. And if you deceive the people who voted for you, then you'll deceive me, so I don't know who to trust. I'll just be honest.
well, I'm not asking you to trust me. That's no big deal. You can vote however you want to vote. My thing is explaining the process. There was no deception of anything. You don't have a demo and donuts when you're talking about things. The whole reason to think through this, again, if we did this in anywhere else, it would be no issue. But I understand there's some personal resentment toward me, and I'm good with that. And we'll move on. My goal is to make sure that, to me, the best thing to do is a project. If council doesn't see so, then we won't have a magistrate building. If you choose to not vote on it, and you vote no on it, that is your right. That's completely your right. So that was the one thing that I was wanted to, kind of bring up, and I wanted to talk to, council. My opinion, based on what we've seen coming forth from council and on the city-wise, I didn't hear the word deception, and have never heard the word deception from anybody in my district. But that is what it is. But I'd like for, I'll go with what the attorney recommends, to either, if we can't bring this back up on the demolition today, I'm okay to put it back on we have either do another special meeting to where we bring the demolition back up to vote on, or as you see fit as an attorney. If you don't see the need, if you feel like we shouldn't take a vote today, we won't take a vote today. Or if the chairman, how he feels, because I'd like to bring the demolition back up to a vote.
I have another question. Again, is there property owned by the city of Westminster? I can remember 11, 14 acres, something like that. And was it discussed in the past on possibly using that property, not the town hall?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
Mr. Durham, I think you're referring to Emergency Lane, where the current fire station is. It was explored at one time, but with the increased number of calls at the fire service, Rescue 5 is also located on that same facility. The safety factor and the visibility from the road for the patrons of the Westminster Magistrate Court was taken into consideration. It was not a recommendation at the time. That was probably somewhere around 2016. So circumstances may have changed since then. A recommendation may be different now, but at that time, it was not a recommendation.
And, when we tabled this motion, it was mentioned that prices is too high, let's wait for them to come down. I think in the last meeting, we all discussed that prices are not gonna come down unless we enter into a great turn down, which would be bad all the way around. But the longer this gets dragged out, the more it's gonna cost the taxpayers. But at the same time, I don't know what the motion is gonna be today, but I will say I'm not ready to make a vote today on anything because I need more time to gather information.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like for everybody on council to know that I am for doing something for the people of Westminster to help them get a magistrate's office. Where this building is the direction we go or not, I don't know, but I am be more than willing to work with anyone to come up with a resolution that would suit
That is the time.
the city. I've already told the people of the city that, and even with my comments now, I didn't want you to think that I was teetotally against that. I am wanting to tell you that I will work with anyone to get them a magistrate's office.
I think that's this whole council, right? We want it, but we want to do what's in the best interest of the taxpayers, whichever that may be.
That's why we've been researching it for 8 years now.
Well, we flip-flopped 2 weeks ago. I mean,
No, we didn't flip-flop 2 weeks ago. I should have asked if it was a personal opinion or an elected opinion. That's what I should have asked. I took it as an elected opinion, and I'll change the way I talk to an elected official over the phone.
Ms. Brock, you
Yes, sir. Mr. Kane brought up a mention of a timeline that we had. This was documented in a real estate facilities land management meeting. I cannot give you the specific date off the top of my head, but I can notate it.
I gave him my thing. I'm on it.
I put the pin mark specifically, now this is in the timeline in its entirety, but the marking on the paper does show the renovation cost versus the demo cost. Sir? No, I got it memorized.
And I do want to state to council, when this brought up, you start talking about, Mr. Hart, when you bring up price, the goal of staff and the goal of the group working together was to lower the cost. So when you see the word 979, I raised my hand too. I agree with you wholeheartedly, because I'm like, Ms. Brock, we gotta do something. And what did you and your staff do to work to with Trail? What was the final figure that y'all came up with after y'all changed some things?
840 something, I believe. I don't have the document right in front of me. And if I just may say, also Mr. Hart and Mr. Durham, well, entirety of council, the $500,000 that was originally proposed in 2014 was going to be a larger, a piece of a larger capital expansion project in Oconee County. And it was just an estimate at that time, because there was an intention for there to be a bond issued for large capital projects during that time, and it just did not happen. I don't think it was an actual estimate. I think it was more of a, we believe it could be this cost. And of course, everything has increased in price since then, so it does make sense. But I just want to let y'all know that was not an actual estimate written on paper anywhere. That was just a figure and amount that we figured we would include in a bonding.
I have another question.
Yes, sir.
When we were doing, let's say we had our builders to inspect this, we were never made aware of this problem existed at that time, were we?
What problem, sir?
The building being demolition, or we got Lake Julian, he does the work. Didn't he inspect the building too?
Yes, sir, we did look at the building.
And he came up with the building's fine?
No, sir, he's not a licensed building inspector. So this is a very tricky building.
But he's a builder. I mean, he does have some type of opinion. He built the recreation department down there at south goes, so
Yes, sir,
I would
constructing
think that he
something
does
from
have
level
some type
ground
of,
to, constructing something
specialty.
from level ground, upward is a lot different. So this particular building is very interesting and odd. And I'd actually propose, if we were gonna continue this discussion, that we actually go visit the building, so y'all can understand, because I did not understand. There is, I think it's called a Kwanzaa structure?
It's just a
Kwanzaa structure?
hanger.
Underneath the brick part of the current structure. So apparently the hole in the roof is leaking in between the shingle part, but there's a metal structure under there, and then there's a third structure that was the original structure. Because of the low cost of the facility, we assumed, obviously, maybe at the time, that the evaluation process would be worth it either way, because there's a secondary building on the site as well that's in really good condition. I don't know how many square feet.
We can rebuild, we can renovate the building. We don't have to tear the building down. What I'm going by is the recommendation from procurement through Trail that says the cost to renovate is this. The cost to rebuild is actually lower and long-term will be better off. The reason why I've thought through this so much, and the reason why I've spent countless hours, this was not supposed to be a days of our lives thing. It's the craziest thing that when you go to make an investment in a city, it turns into drama. It blows my mind. The whole thing, the reason why I do the research that I do, so we don't have the issues that I feel like ever since I've been on council we've done. The current courthouse, those issues that have came up that could have been resolved early on. The last thing I want to do is go spend $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 renovating a structure. And we renovated, and it's great. We saved it. We had to put a new shell on the outside. And then 5 years down the road, I hear another council going, man, why did they do this? So from that research, I mean, the hours have been put in to make sure that we're doing the right thing, period. So if the only thing, the thing that if you want to say that I deceived somebody or being guilty on, I was trying to take a building that was falling in, the steeple was going to fall off of it, and hope to renovate the interior of it and build something that would be better suited in that specific area. I would have done the same thing in anybody else's district, because to me, I feel like, and I hear it constantly, that the counties don't do anything for the cities, and that could not be any further from the truth, from what I see out here. There's things that I think the county can do more for the cities. There's things that I think the county needs to focus on more. But from a standpoint on this project, I felt like, from a dollar figure standpoint, if we could help the city while building a magistrate, that's what my focus was. I don't think the right thing to do is to go and build behind the fire station where they train and different things go on. That's their world, and they were not happy when that discussion came up about building something back there, and I agree with them. That's their world back there. They do multitude of things back there. I don't think a magistrate needs to be back there. If the difference price is $150,000, maybe that grows, when we paid $121,000, 121, not 160, not 200, we paid $121,000 for this site. And yes, we've got to demo it because it is proven to be the less expensive and longer term better option. But I'm fine to bring it back on, either if the chairman would like a special meeting to where we actually put the vote on there, or if, I know we're on a timeline because we're through procurement, and I don't know what that timeline is, because if we send this bid back out, it's gonna go up again. If we'd built it in 2013, it probably would have been $400,000 or $500,000. But we're in 2021. If we get into 22, 23, go ahead and add another 100 on it.
Ms. Brock, do we know, do you know when the procurement, bid expires?
We worked diligently to try to keep it where it was. And just for the record, the document that I passed out was from the August 18th, 2020 Real Estate Committee minutes, the timeline here. Just want to reference that. The reason I was looking that up on my phone is here we are, 6 or 8 months out. As we all know, construction costs continue to increase daily. I feel like we can probably contact the contractor and make sure that we're still within the parameters of that, but it expired long ago, let me say that. The price that we had, generally they're good for 90 days. We're well outside of that. I feel like there could be some negotiating there. I'd be happy to have the procurement office contact the company and ensure that we are still on cue for that.
Mr. Chairman. So my 160,000 comment for vacant lot was because that's what it takes to purchase the land and get the lot vacant. So we're looking at, honestly, we're gambling with taxpayer money. If we put the building up for sale, now we got $160,000 in it. It's got bad press around it, and we're a desperate seller. So the taxpayers stand to lose money. But another point, so the court system's backed up because of coronavirus and everything. It'd be interesting to know if somehow or another, under those parameters, we could tie some of that coronavirus stimulus money and use it for the court. I don't know. I don't think we have those answers yet, but I think
I had made a note of that myself.
something we can look into.
So the next regular scheduled council meeting is April the 20th.
Okay, I've gotten word from the procurement office. Trail has stated that they will do the best to keep within the numbers in the quote that we received. That is also in the backup material for the August 18th meeting. I'd be happy to supply that if needed. It is design build, so we wouldn't have to rebid. There just may be a modification on construction material.
So if we wait to April 20th, we might have clarification by then from Treasury on Mr. Durham's question on whether we could use the COVID money or not.
And I can ask that question if I may, Mr. Chairman. I can ask that question within the survey. As far as today, my only concern is what was put on the agenda for public notice purposes, for Freedom of Information Act purposes. I think general direction to staff on next steps is appropriate for a motion coming out of today's meeting. But I believe that we have not given the public enough notice for a procurement decision to be made today. So if there was a motion to revoke the prior direction to sell the building and to bring back to council cost to demo and build a new structure, or a cost to rebuild or renovate the current structure, those are good, and then we'll bring back those numbers and see how tight Trail is to it. That general direction to staff, I think, is within the notice, and it's no expenditure directly today of county funds. That would be, I think, the confines of what you're dealing with today for proper notice to the public, motion purposes.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Motion to revoke.
All right, just to make sure.
I make a motion to revoke the last vote on the Westminster Magistrate to put it up for sale and bring back the original motion that was sent before us for demolition.
Did y'all want to include within that cost for renovation? I mean, we had those numbers. Okay.
They're in the packet. Just make sure everybody has the packet. It's always been there. If you follow the council, it'd be there.
I just want to make sure that that's one of the items you wanted to include. If you wanted to include any investigation on other sites, these are all things that are discussed. So we would need to move back to council if that's what you want.
Is that your motion?
So move.
Can I have Mr. Duncan to come back up?
What, did you second the motion? I'm sorry.
I second the motion and they've changed it, so I don't figure that was seconded.
I'll second the motion.
All right, so
Discussion.
before we go, so at this point, the motion is to revoke the prior direction to sell the Free Gospel Holiness property, site property, to bring back to full council numbers for the raising and rebuilding of, raising and new construction of the magistrate's office, also the renovation of a new magistrate's office, and any information that staff can glean about alternate sites. Is that the motion?
I agree.
Okay, so now discussion.
That's what you seconded, Mr.
Mr.
I'd second
Kane,
that,
Kane.
yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Do y'all have any other property that, in the city, that the city would be happy to build on if we helped?
Well, see, that goes back, Mr. Horton, to what we were talking about earlier. I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for the city until I get with our city administrator and the rest of the council and see if that's feasible for us to do any other properties. This has never been discussed with the full council,
Could you,
from anybody in Westminster.
could you, your next meeting, bring that up to
I
where?
certainly will.
Okay.
I certainly will, to answer your question, sure.
Okay.
Anything, any questions y'all have, just let me know, or let the council know, or our administrator. We'll get anything you need.
When is your next meeting?
Before ours.
You guys know?
It's before the 20th, Mr. Chairman.
Before the 20th?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just so it's before the 20th.
Okay, I have a comment. So, I'm gonna vote no on this next vote, just for the fact I'm not ready to commit and flip again. We have more information to gather. We can gather information after their meeting, where they stand. I wanna go see the building myself. And, so if that motion is gonna stand, I'll vote no, because we need to make sure we do the due diligence, because there's a lot of money, taxpayer money at play right here.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may, just to make sure that motion was stated correctly, as I understood it, it was to bring back the information for you all to digest.
Yes.
But you said to revoke the decision to sell.
To sell, yes. So, because that's an ongoing thing that we need to get on that if we're gonna do it.
Right, and if I may, Mr. Chairman, the reason that the revoke of the sale would be necessary is that we are currently contacting appraisers because the motion was to sell it at fair market value. Well, it has to be appraised to do so. Appraisals are extended out, and I just wanted to make sure that we didn't pay for an appraisal that wasn't necessary.
So again, it's just, whatever. It's pretty, we're playing with taxpayer money. We're gonna go out and back, out and back.
Any other
Chair?
discussion?
Yes. I think we all know, at least I know, I don't know if anybody else practices in the magistrate court in Westminster. I have. I don't do litigation anymore, but
Oh.
2014, 2013, 2014, 2015. It's deplorable. And I agree with the sentiments of the Westminster City Council. As a lawyer and as somebody who's an officer of the court and as a member of the public, it is inexcusable hold a judiciary function in that place. It's not right. The people of this county deserve better. The people of Westminster deserve better. That was an issue long before I got in county council. It was an issue we inherited. And Ms. Durham, you're going to inherit a lot of issues. That's just the nature of the job. So buckle up. The cost to construct that building sounds like it's about going to be $1 million. Wherever we put it, we can put it on parcel A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's going to be $1 million. So everybody needs to go ahead and understand that and prepare themselves for that. Wherever the money's going to come from, whether it's going to come from the CARES Act, the COVID 1.9 trillion, where it's going to come from a bond, where it's going to come from millage, where it's going to come from a grant, that's the cost, it sounds like, unless the building material market is going to adjust in the next year. Like Mr. Durham said, I hope that doesn't happen. Because if that happens, we got a lot bigger problems to deal with. I was disappointed when I found out that building could not be repurposed. I was under the impression, and I was hopeful, that when council voted unanimously, I believe, to buy that property, that there was going to be a magistrate court in that building. We were going to repurpose an old building for that. had numerous discussions over the years. Been doing this going on 7 years. Numerous discussions with the judges in this county about how badly we needed a magistrate office. It's a shame that it wasn't dealt with before I came on council in 2014. It's a shame. It's also a shame that it wasn't dealt with before today. So that's on, every council has, I won't say kick the can down the road. We're closer than we've ever been, and we're gonna get there. But I can assure you, Mr. Durham, there's been no deception on this part. You can say whatever you want up here.
Just
can-
read the press releases. Read them.
You-
Right?
you-
Read
hey.
it. It was processed. It was going to be rehabbed. That was the whole purpose.
You can say whatever you want regardless of the truth of the statement.
The truth of the statement is, well, just go back and look. Go back. You was here. You shouldn't have to. But as a member of the public, it was sold that this is great. It's perfect square footage. It's everything. But then after the day it was bought, you knew it was raining when you went in. There was no effort taken to salvage the building, and it sat there and weathered and
Mr.
damaged
Durham, I've
even
never
more.
been inside that building. I don't have time to go on every cotton picking site
Well, one
to see if it's
council
a good.
member was in there when it was raining.
And he was there. And he was told, we were told, or we were led to believe that it could be rehabilitated.
And it
Okay.
can be rehabilitated.
It can be. It's gonna be expensive. The cost of building goes up every year. That doesn't mean there's deception. I mean,
Again, if the original intent was to save the building like it was sold to the public, there would have been immediate actions taken to prevent further damage.
and I agree that there should have been remedial action. Is that a council function?
Well, if one council member knows it's raining in, then yes, it should have been brought to
So
the council.
Mr. Davis should have put a tarp up there on the roof.
He should have brought it to council and said, we need to take action to keep
Well-
further.
Council did know it was raining inside there. The talk was the removal of the structure where it was leaking in was known to be removed and build another structure on the top of it. So the entire roof structure, it needed to be replaced.
Right, and I realize there's a roof on top of a roof. But if it was raining inside, that rain was coming from one roof penetrating the nets into the interior of the building.
It
Is
was
that
not
correct?
coming into the sanctuary of the building.
So when you said it was raining in the building, that was not true.
The sanctuary is different from the building. When you walk into the front of the
So
building,
in no portion of the building was it raining inside the building?
Mr. Durham.
I'm asking.
No, you're not asking. This is normal, but that's okay. When you walk in under the steeple, which is not the sanctuary portion of the building, it is raining into that area.
Is that a,
Inside the
is that part of the
sanctuary.
building?
No, that part was going to be removed as part of the renovation.
Okay, that's a key information. So that was gonna be gone, so it wasn't raining in any portion of the building that was gonna be kept.
No, it was not raining in any portion of the building that was going to be kept, which is the Quonset hut itself. So,
Ms. Brock, you look like you need to say something.
Yes, sir, thank you so much. Mr. Duncan, Westminster, their council meets on the 20th, the same day as our next meeting. Is that correct?
and they have already met, unless I'm wrong, about the Westminster Magistrate Building.
Right.
I mean, again, this is not a dramatic thing. This is a need. I mean, that's, like I said, it's clear, what we have going on, and I'm good with that. The thing is there's a lot of people that watch what we do. There's a lot of research that's been done well before I got on here. I've got the motion, as stated up here. Mr. Kane seconded it. I know we all have a busy day to do.
Well, and I would just like to add, there were numerous things, big problems that this council inherited. OITP, how was that going to be graded? That wasn't a decision I made. That wasn't a decision Mr. Davis made or Glenn made to purchase that property. Golden Corner Commerce Park, we didn't agree to buy that, but we got to play the hands we're dealt in a lot of ways, and it's not going to be always a clear-cut thing. If it was clear-cut and easy to do, you'd have a lot of people wanting to run for these seats. But it's not. It's not an easy job. You inherit the good and you inherit the bad of the prior councils, and we're dealing with the great decisions of councils from 50 years ago and the bad decisions of councils from 50 years ago. And that's going to continue. What we've got to do is figure out what's the best thing going forward. And I think we know a lot today, but I can assure you, I take great offense to someone saying deception about that, okay? I
It
mean,
was. You can be offended, but yes, it
you-
was.
You can also say whatever you want up here in this legislative proceeding, and it won't be considered defamation. And you don't seem to have a problem with what the facts are.
Again, the facts are it was sold
That was your
100% to the public
Okay.
as it was going to be refurbished. So then we come here 2 weeks ago, the motion was rushed at the beginning of the meeting to sell it. Now 2 weeks later, we're back to not selling it. I just asked for some more time. I would like to know from the Westminster City Council about property that they have that may be suitable for it. I mean, you've drug this out for years. You're talking about $1 million in taxpayer money. I think we owe it to the citizens to make sure it's right.
My motion stands.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion?